Hello and welcome again. I just launched the recording of Unlock Your Agency, a little webinar on how to use story writing principles to figure out how to actually have more power and influence over how your life goes and what you are doing in life. And I am Bethany of Unlock Coaching. I know that this is something that a lot of life coaches and even creativity writers talk about a lot, about how you can, move your life forward and attain your goals. But I'm kind of synthesizing from different areas of my life of both learning more about stories and how they work and plotting, as well as life coaching and health coaching principles, and putting them all together to kind of create a 3-step program of things to do to be able to take power in your life and move forward and be able to go out and get the things that you want in life by not allowing some common things to trip you up. I'm going to go ahead and launch my PowerPoint and hope that it is really beautiful. All right, unlock your agency. 3 tools to become the hero of your life. So one of the things that I wanted to start with is, what is agency? In writing terms, it's about being the protagonist, about being the person who makes things happen. And this is a word that's used often, especially in association with people who like women or minorities who don't fit into the stereotypical like hero, rippling muscles, white, hero, James Bond type, to evaluate whether these people are being able to fulfill a role of a protagonist and someone who has a lot of power over their own story, or whether the writer has not given them that power to change their life. And even if there is a character that is in the center of the story, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the power to make the decisions that affect the storyline. And so applying that to us, is it overstating a little bit maybe to say that you can be the hero of your life? Maybe, but I'd like to think of, if you were thinking about an Olympian and like the work that they've done in their life to get to where they are, would you say that they are not the hero of their story? Would you say that somebody else, like their lives kind of happened to them, not because of them? I don't think so. And the same thing goes for anyone who is really a master in their field. Geniuses, research is showing that people who are just really, really masters of their craft are often the people who show up and put in the work, rather than people who have a supernatural gifting of talent. So how can I, of moderate gifts and willpower, maybe a very large ambition, cultivate heroism like those geniuses? We're going to start with the very basics and go over 3 actions to start off with. So what is the storyline that we're talking about today? You need to first leave the farm, accept the quest, and take up the sword. So those are all like 3 things that happen in the beginning of any story, and I will break them down later as we go along for the purposes of what we're talking about. So, but those are like the story categories. If you're thinking of like a classic storyline, you have to first leave the comfortable, and you have to then accept that you are going to be doing things that you haven't done before, and also take responsibility for them. So let's start with leaving the farm. So know where you're going, at least the first leg. I think that a lot of heroes don't know where they're going to end up when their stories start, and that's the same for us. Like, we go every day and we do things without knowing necessarily what's going to happen afterward, but we have a goal in mind. So that first step is very important, to have this idea of where you want to be. I'm going to be using photos from my trip in Germany. That was a bicycling trip, just because to me they have a sort of resonance with this topic, because it was a lot of long, hard work, including some ups and downs and crises and triumphs. And so at least to me, they have this sense of moving forward. So first you have to leave the farm. The difference between a daydream and a goal or an active dream is actually your agency in it. So if I were to say that I really wanted to be on X Factor, so it's one thing to sit and be thinking, I would love it if Simon Cowell were to come across me, like we meet in the airport and I just happen to be humming something, but it's so beautiful, it like casts me on the spot and says, you got to try out for X Factor, and then I go on and I win. And that's a daydream, because it is completely happening to you in your imagination, and it's not something that you actually have any control over how it turns out. So instead, if you were to be expressing your agency, you would know that the first thing you have to do is fill out the application form and actually apply to be on X Factor. I certainly have, I've watched that show, and every time I watch it, I start thinking about what would happen if I went on it, because I'm a singer, even though I don't want to be on X Factor, and in fact, don't want $1 million contract to sing, but it tells this very powerful story, so you get caught up in that story. So if your goal was to be on X Factor, you would make a plan of doing the paperwork to get in there. You would show up for the audition. But wait, if you didn't just want to show up to the audition and you wanted to actually, be on the show, get past the audition, maybe even win, then you'd have a lot of preparation to do before you actually showed up, after you did the paperwork, or as you were planning to do the paperwork to apply to get on. So you would probably go and talk to your friends or a musical teacher and say, hey, how can I improve? I know that a lot of people don't do that, and that's why they end up on the first couple of episodes of the show, that or any other singing show. But that, you would go and you would say with, friends, hey, I really want to have a good chance if I get on the show. So I want to be able to expand my repertoire. I want to be able to sing lots of different things, and you'd practice those. And not only that, you'd think about the fact that you were going to be really nervous when you got up in front of those crowds. And so you'd get on and be showing that. I think my PowerPoint isn't showing, and so I don't neither see my face nor my screen. Okay, there we are. Okay. So the difference between your daydream and an active dream, you put in the work, and you not only put in the work to get on, but you think about the long-term goal. You have lots of steps in between. So when you show up at X Factor, even if you don't get on the show, you've worked on the dream, which is probably to become a big time singer and have this chance at actually making a career out of singing, because you've done that work. So, whether you reach that finale the way you think you would or not, you are pursuing it in a very different way than just thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I bumped into Simon Cowell? So I have an exercise for you to do, which is to start thinking about how you would be planning the first leg of your trip. as you leave the farm. So name one dream that you haven't worked on in a while. It could be that you haven't worked on it the last couple of weeks, could be years. So something that you really want to achieve but haven't put some work into recently. And I want you to think of what are 2 or 3 concrete steps that you could do to achieve it. I'm going to give you time both to get paper and pen, and if you don't have that, or maybe you can use your phone or computer. But so type out the dream that you haven't really worked on lately and 2 or 3 concrete steps to achieve it. And we'll go back to this a little bit later. So don't worry too much about thinking through it, but just what are 2 or 3 concrete things to do on your way to that dream. The earlier picture was of me, of my bike. Here, this picture is of me actually on the bike, getting ready to set off in the morning. All right. If you've written that down, should have had time, but if you haven't, feel free to keep working on it. So the dream is only the first step. So, but the being clear about what it is that you want to do is very important to being able to achieve it. Because if you haven't really been clear about what that first step is, like that million miles that you have to go, the first mile is the only one that you can really be putting the work into. So you have to be willing to risk leaving comfort and security by taking those steps. And so this comes to accepting the quest. Subtitle, No More Blame Games. So nothing undercuts your agency like making excuses or letting circumstances control, what you do. So, but there's often this sense that, you'll do the thing that you want to do. If you have a passion for it, you're going to achieve it, right? But often we have really real fears about those things that we want to accomplish, and those also hold us back. But there is a lot of things that we might not even notice about the way that we are interacting with our dream, where we make excuses. I know that sometimes you have conversations with people, like you're like, oh, come over to my place and do this, and they're like, well, I'm really busy, and you kind of get the sense that, oh, they don't really want to do it. But other times, you have this sense of really wanting to do something, and it's not that you don't want to do it, but it's that it's too big, it's too important, signifies too much. So the thing about being a hero in your story, the difference between a hero and a side character is who takes responsibility for the whole deal, right? The story rests on the shoulders of the hero, and that may be the only reason that they're the person that we're following through the story. A side character may do things that are really important. A sidekick may provide a lot of what has to happen in the finale, but the person who is the one with agency is the one who has taken responsibility for how things turn out. And this is not to say that there aren't villains out there trying to stop you. So that's kind of putting it in hyperbole and saying, oh, there's a big bad guy out there to get you. But and sometimes that can be the case, that there are people who really don't want you to do anything that they don't approve of, in which case that's not something is really within my scope of practice. But for most of us, it's that we have these little niggling things. I don't have the time. I have kids, and it just doesn't happen. I'm not ready. I'm too old now. I need things to be in line first. I need the money first. So we're going to go back to those steps that you wrote down about your dream and the things that you need to accomplish to get started going towards them. And this dream is not the only dream that you have necessarily, but it's just one that we're using for the example. And I want you to think about those steps and write down 2 or 3 excuses or reasons that you haven't already taken those steps. And, they may be very good reasons. They probably are very good reasons. Otherwise, you wouldn't let them stand in your way. But go ahead and write them down and see where the responsibility lies with these reasons or excuses, and whether they are actually taking responsibility onto your shoulders for whether that thing happens or not. It's a good thing to learn to catch yourself saying these things, because it doesn't mean that you can't ever say, no, I can't do this right now. It doesn't mean that you can't ever realize that now is not the time, or that there's a more appropriate thing to be using, using your energy on for the moment. But it does help to look at things that stop you from doing what you want to do, and train yourself to hear it when you start to make excuses, because the thing that you want to do is important or big or going to take a lot of energy. Or coming to one of my last things, whether people are going to judge you for it. So the last step is to take up your sword, which is to accept your power. Not all heroes start with a sense of their power over their story. In fact, a lot of them spend a lot of time trying to figure out what they're doing, where they're going, and not to be too specific, but Frodo following Aragorn around, the countryside after, spending years still in the Shire, just not really understanding their responsibility and their power over the story. That is fairly common. And so it is with us. We often allow circumstances or more urgent seeming things to kind of take our focus away from the things that we really want to accomplish. So when we stop making excuses, we also have to confront the fact that we have this big responsibility. The difference between a hero and a casualty is the power that they wield in the story, because bad things can happen to the hero too. And there can be opposition, and there is a lot of, a lot of the stuff that happens in the book happens to the hero and is not what they choose to have happen. This is still true, that when you are attacking your goal, when you are taking up a challenge, when you are working toward the thing that you really want in life, there are going to be things that are out of your control that you do not want to have happen. And it can be really terrifying to take that responsibility for your life and say, there are other people who are trying to stop me, or there are circumstances that are beyond my control that are make it harder, but I still am the only one who is the final arbiter of what happens. And, it's true that sometimes we can't control what happens, and that stops us from doing things. The only reason that it is really important to take full responsibility for what happens is to allow us to have that power in our own sense of ourselves. So you can be working towards something, and the only thing that will push you through those times of resistance or challenge is going to be that idea that you can, in the end, achieve what you want to do. Or, take a side quest and figure out how to do something else that kind of comes alongside of that. This doesn't mean that, your story is going to be straightforward. Doesn't mean that you're never going to have to change plans. It means that you have that inner sense that you will make those decisions as those things come up, and it is your right to make those decisions. So one thing that I didn't really cover yet, but meant to back when I mentioned villains, is that there is a very important element to claiming agency, claiming power over your life, taking responsibility for it, which is to not deny that other people may have harmed you or caused you to not be able to proceed in your goals. And yet, if you do not forgive them, that is giving the power away from you. And I think it's interesting how much of a conflict there is in pop culture about forgiveness and with lots of people, because it is a very difficult subject. But men, not only do a lot of spiritual truths come back to the fact that you have to forgive, but research proves that forgiveness is good for your health and your well-being and your longevity and your whole life. And that's because resentment not only takes power out of your hands, but it creates issues in your body. You're holding bitterness or holding toxic memories in your body. And that is something where, if you think of it in these story terms again, like kind of bringing it out, the longer that a hero spends time just thinking that this other that the villain shouldn't be, shouldn't be doing what they're doing, the less time they can devote to, getting back up and going back after their goal or figuring out how to change their plans. And so forgiveness doesn't say that the wrong didn't happen, because it can be a huge deterrent to whatever it is that is your goal in life, be that a big, I want to be a rock star goal, or just I would like to have a peaceful home goal. And the phrase forgiven and forgotten, I think, gets misused, because you have to forgive, and you have to release the thing that was done in harm to you, because it's taking up your energy and it's taking up space in you. But when you release it, that doesn't mean that it no longer happened. It doesn't mean that you completely forget that this that this person is capable of hurting you or whatever. But there needs to be that same release to take ownership again and say, what that person did to me did stop me for a while, or what that person did handicap me from being able to accomplish this in this moment, but I need to still move forward because I am going to forgive and release and let go of that. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot in terms of, achieving your dreams and your goals. But the coaches and writers about, personal development that I really respect all really interact with that. And there's a lot of good material about that in Martha Beck's Finding Your North Star, in Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, and in Brene Brown's Rising Strong, which is not specifically about being a creator necessarily, but is also just very useful for figuring out how to move on with your story after harm. So we have yet another exercise to take up your sword. What if you suddenly had everything your dream entails? What would you fear other people would think about that? This is something that I think we don't often delve into as far as like creators go, but we often have this idea that, there's going to be judgment. And it's true, there is going to be judgment, but it's very important to distill what we fear we are going to be judged for and separate that from what we can actually control or what people will actually say. So I want you to take this moment and think about what it is that you fear people judging you for as you run toward that dream, or you change the way you do stuff, be it letting yourself take time to practice your craft, or be it actually going out and changing your wardrobe or applying for X Factor. Take a moment and look at that goal that you already put down, and think of what things in terms of how other people would perceive it trip you up. And to go a little bit deeper into this, we often have this idea of, everybody would, that is a monolith of, people who are going to judge us, or the way that people would think it was weird, or that you were above, you thought that you were better than you were. And it often is something that we use to corral our own behavior and make sure that we're, behaving or doing things the way that other people do them. So everybody is a category that is huge in our minds. But when you write down those things that you think of that, I would, if I all of a sudden became a rock star, then everyone would say that I didn't look the part, or whatever it is. Think about whether there's anybody in your life. Part 2 is think about whether there's anybody specifically that you can think of that would say that to you or about you. And there very well may be. The exercise that one of the authors I mentioned, Martha Beck, has you do is to think of 6 people who might say these mean things to you. And it's really difficult to actually find that many people. So take a moment, think about what it is that you think that people would judge you for if you had your dream, if you had already accomplished it. And think about who specifically might be saying that to you, and whether there really is somebody that you think would say that. I'm going to give you a couple extra minutes since that one's a little bit more in depth. All right. Even if you haven't really been able to fully complete that exercise, it's a good one to kind of think about doing as you kind of hear those ideas that come into your head when you think about achieving what you want to do. You know, who is it who would say that? What are they actually saying? What is it that you fear being judged for? So, but it is scary to achieve things and move yourself out of where you are now, or even step into that without knowing for sure that it's going to work out, which is usually the case. But I'd like for you to take a moment and really enter into what it would be like if you had accomplished that dream. And it could be that, the dream that you chose isn't as, big, or, you have other dreams, but you used one, that was a little bit smaller for the exercise. But you can do this with another one that comes to mind, if so, or you can just go with it. But I want you to really enter into the moment that you have achieved that dream and what it feels like, what you will have as your sense of yourself, of your surroundings. What does it look like to have achieved that? What does it feel like to be in this new life where you have achieved that? What is different about your surroundings, about who you are with? And this is a better exercise to kind of do later and spend some time on, really actually taking notes on, like, what are the tactile details of life after this has been accomplished, or on your way into that final stage of accomplishing it. And it's so and now for just a moment, it is scary to think about those changes, but look at your current risk-free life. Now, look at your dream. Look back to your risk-free life. Now look at your dream. Does your current life smell like that dream? I think that it is really important to have a really strong sense of that vision, of that dream, of that mission, that goal, your vision for your life. And I think it's also very important to enter into that as part of your life right now, not just enjoying the idea of someday accomplishing it, but enjoying the process of achieving it. So being the hero of your own life and letting others star in theirs, because when you accomplish the things that you are really not destined, because that implies, again, like a lack of agency. Oh, destiny has created you and you are going forth for it. No, when you are creating the life that you really want to live, when you are fulfilling your potential, unlocking your agency to be able to move forward and accomplish these things, I think we often fear leaving people behind, but instead you're going to be coming alongside people with their own dreams and visions, and being able to help come with them into a journey and be able to be more helpful to them as you are fulfilling what you should be doing. We already kind of spending a moment to make the dream tactile, but I hope that you remember to do that later when you have more time to take notes. And I was really excited about doing this as a webinar because it gives me kind of a little intro to present to people and be able to give those basic tools to people. And I'm going to be uploading this later. And also those of you who have attended or who later watch the webinar and request it will be able to get a little handbook little booklet that is like an outline of the class. But to me, it is really the most awesome way to unlock that, to have somebody who helps you through coaching. And I know that for me, I have been working with a coach for about a year now, and so much of these things that I get brought back to these exercises. Okay, what is it that you really want to do? Because that changes as you go along. It becomes, your dream isn't static. It's not that you are becoming that there's the single thing that you want to do and that is all that you are going to do. These things grow and develop, and they come to become more complex and nuanced. And as you go along, you may find that there's this other thing that you're drawn to. And that is something that having that vision and having someone to kind of be there to hear what you are saying and say, okay, I would love to support you in doing that, but is that still, really the vision and the thing of your heart? And is that still what you really want to accomplish? That's something that I'm so excited about with doing coaching one-on-one. So if you're interested in that and having someone who is there with you and meeting with you to make sure that you are actually showing up to do the work, that you have very clear goals set in mind, that is what I do with Unlock Coaching. And it's something where I meet with people twice a month. And if you are part of this webinar, I actually have a special offer for you. Even if you, so I'm actually going to go off of the recording now and open up to questions for those. And thank you all so much for showing up. If you are listening on the webinar, feel free to the webinar later. Feel free to send me questions, and also check in with my newsletter sign-up list to get some more information and get that booklet that I talked about that is the outline of the class. Thank you so much for listening.